An agreement between Alberta and Ottawa is expected this week for a memorandum of understanding on a new pipeline to BC's coast, involving an exemption to the province's tanker ban.
Big picture, what we're looking to do and what we are doing is a series of major investments, nation-building projects that make our country stronger.
Premier Eby talked Monday morning with Prime Minister Carney, expressing his strong opposition to the plan, telling reporters the deal isn't yet finalized and reiterating his frustrations that even Saskatchewan was included in talks about the pipeline, but not BC.
Not something that would happen to Quebec. This is not something that would happen to other provinces in the Federation. I don't know why. The thought was that it would be okay for it to happen in British Columbia.
Eby acknowledged an official MOU was likely days away, but disputed that means an actual pipeline is inevitable, with no private sector proponent yet.
It is going to be taxpayer funded, that British Columbia get access to a $50 billion federally funded project as well.
I'm thrilled to see that this is going forward. I think it's part of a nation-building project that helps to unify this country.
Eby told the Prime Minister his biggest demand, that coastal First Nations be at the table.
Coastal First Nations consent and support is required for this conversation.
Meanwhile, Alberta Premier...
But it's not, right? It really isn't, and it shouldn't have to be this way. And unfortunately, this is building up a lot of hatred and possibly even racism in this country, which I don't know if it's government caused, but it seems like it actually kind of is. Look, First Nations is a sensitive topic, okay? I get it. But at the same time, you can't just block things that are going to benefit an entire country because you're First Nations and this is our territory and this is that. No, this is just not how it works. We all live in the country. We all share the land, okay? And we need to work together. And so it really pisses me off more and more now. The fact that First Nations seem to be blocking so many projects and so many things, not to mention the whole, Graves thing. It's kind of repetitive and it's a little bit annoying. That's all I'm saying. I understand it's a sensitive topic, but it's a little bit annoying.
Danielle Smith expressed confidence on her radio talk show. A deal is coming.
We've been going back and forth almost daily for probably the better part of the last 2 weeks.
Feeling left out of consultations, Eby's frustrations amplified by news a huge Saskatchewan potash company plans to ship its products out of Washington state, not BC's ports.
That really was just the cherry on top.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe firing back.
I'm really disappointed that an NDP premier would start thinking that this conversation is either or. It's either his projects or someone else's, and always advocating that it should be his.
Rob Buffum joins us live from Victoria. Rob, when are we expecting the deal to be announced?
Well, Mijung, the expectation is we'll hear an announcement on Thursday. The rationale for that is that Danielle Smith's party's big convention is the following day, starting on Friday, so that timing would tailor in nicely for that event for her, certainly. As for how First Nations feel about this, I reached out to the Coastal First Nations today and was told that they would have a response, a statement, a reaction, if and when there is an announcement on Thursday. So stay tuned.
Rob Buffum.
It's the classic case of, we're going to a party or we're going to an event. Before I commit to it, I just want to know who else is going. It's really annoying. And I get that the First Nation stuff is very sensitive, and I feel like I've been pretty good my entire life of, being empathetic and trying to be understanding and get educated on the First Nation stuff, doing my progressive part. But at what point do we just get shit done in this country? Can you really just say, hey, this used to be my ancestors something or another, we want our land back, and there's hundreds of people that own properties and businesses on said land, and then the Supreme Court just says, you're right, let's just give it back to them. And so shit like that, like the whole property debacle that's happening in British Columbia, is that would literally cause a civil war. The funniest part about it is that pretty much all of Ottawa is technically on unceded territory. So if they're really going to be starting to give land back, give the freaking Parliament buildings back. Give all the offices back. Give everything back from Toronto and Ottawa to the First Nations. Just let them have it, right? Who cares at that point? See, like, if you don't just put an end to it at the beginning, then it just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, right? Give an inch, they try to take a mile. And that's no disrespect to the entire First Nations. It's some. We know that there's corruption in everything. There's corruption in everything, okay? But this type of corruption literally bleeds taxpayers' money, and it bleeds like projects. Like we don't get shit done in this country because of it. Sometimes by certain people. Very annoying. But we're gonna lean a little bit more into what's going on with this pipeline because David Eby's against it, and it's pissing a lot of people off. And I love that people are starting to get angry with David Eby because I don't like David Eby. He's a meanie. He's an evil, evil little man.
So the big hurdle will be, of course, British Columbia. First Nations on the coast have issues with the idea of another pipeline. The Premier is very upset that he has not been included in these conversations, doesn't like the idea that a tanker ban may be lifted or exempt for some sort of future project. What do you make of the hurdle that is British Columbia? Those are real concerns they have.
Well, in due course, if there is a specific project that applies for a permit from the National Energy Regulator, the British Columbia government would have every right to make its representations at the time, to express its concerns. But David Eby, frankly, I'm surprised he's a lawyer. He was the Attorney General who got absolutely humiliated when he tried to stop the Trans Mountain expansion. He had a judicial he passed a law to say BC could regulate an interprovincial pipeline. The BC appeal court unanimously said, no, you can't. No. This is a federal, exclusive federal jurisdiction, upheld unanimously by the Supreme Court of Canada. So I would say to Mr. Eby, do you believe in the Constitution and the rule of law or not? And are you on Team Canada or not? Because all of this this whinging that he's doing is has already it's out of bounds. It's unconstitutional. BC cannot stop interprovincial infrastructure like this.
They can't stop it, but they can certainly raise their concerns around it, and that is what he's doing. And he hasn't been consulted. So,
well, listen, why doesn't he consult British Columbians? Every poll I've seen in the last year indicates a significant majority of British Columbians support this. And by the way, on First Nations, I don't buy the notion that there's a widespread opposition. When that was actually tested on the Trans Mountain expansion, the Supreme Court upheld a trial court finding that 111 of 119 Indigenous communities that had some putative interest were either supportive or neutral, and ultimately got built, as you saw, with very limited actual resistance. Same with Coastal GasLink. We heard a lot of noise about a couple of allegedly hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en. It got built with the support of every elected council there. And so what we have found is as long as there's equity participation available to Indigenous communities, I have seen overwhelming support amongst Western Canadian First Nations for projects like this.
Okay, what about the idea of just increasing the Trans Mountain pipeline? That is something that the Premier Eby does support, and there is additional capacity there.
Sure, I would take a both-and approach, but I do hope that they can focus on that as a constructive point of agreement without allowing the dispute over a potential Northwest pipeline to disrupt it. You could the Trans Mountain Company, which is a Crown Corporation, federal corporation, could expand by upwards of 300,000 barrels a day shipments down to the Port of Vancouver, dredge the harbor, which means more capacity loaded into the tankers that come out of there safely. That would be really helpful. And Enbridge has some proposals to optimize their pipeline network that could also increase shipments. Mm-hmm. And I'm an advocate of finishing the Keystone XL project. It's no longer KXL technically, but that gets Trump to buy into additional Canadian exports. It would be a lot simpler and a lot cheaper to get that done, probably a lot more quickly as well.
In order for this agreement to go forward, there are things that Alberta will have to do around carbon capture and storage, around emissions. Is this kind of the Prime Minister's attempt to put the ball in Alberta's court and say, if you really want to do this, let's get you to commit to some movement on that front?
Well, I think think that probably reflects his view, the federal government's view. And I think Alberta would say, welcome to the party. We were the first subnational jurisdiction, or the first jurisdiction in North America with an industrial price on carbon emissions. And Ralph Klein did that in 2005. And we used those resources in part to pay for the first large-scale CCUS, carbon sequestration projects.
All right, starting to get a little boring and nerdy. That's the thing about politics is these people are the masters at just getting super boring and nerdy and in detail. Like, I don't care about that. Are we going to have a pipeline or are we not? That's all I care about, right? Let me know what you guys think down below.